Welcome to Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show. We will see you in about 45 seconds or so. Make sure that you are subscribing to our channels, our LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Turn on notifications, and we are very excited to be here with you. It's almost time, about 30 more seconds. Make sure to grab your notebook and pen so you can jot down notes along the way, because at the end of the show, you could have an opportunity to ask our guests questions so we can dive a little deeper into these topics. And here we go. Welcome to Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 100th episode of Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show. And yes, we have a lot of fun here, and we have a lot of professionalism at the same time. And today we're going to dive a little deeper into developing a program. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about ways to improve our vocational technical programs, but we don't always spend time talking about other programs that are really developing in our industry. So we're going to spend some time today with Robert Lopez from Summers Heating and Cooling. Robert, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We've got Aaron Tevebaugh from Johnstone Supply. How's it going?
Good.
And Jeff Bledsoe, Contractor Development Manager for Daikin Comfort Technologies.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here.
And let us all know where you're joining in from. We'd love to know how large this community of HVAC professionals are growing into. So when I talk about different vocational programs, let's step back for a minute and let's talk about ways that we can build our vocational programs. So with us today, we have representation from a contractor program. We have representation from a distributor program, and we have representation from a manufacturer that is working with different programs to build those and elevate the education. And so we'll spend a little time diving back and forth, asking questions from everyone, and very possibly we'll have Brad Tisdale from the UA joining us later. He's on his way back to the PC right now. So we'll see if he jumps in. If he does, we'll bring in some of his perspectives. So one of the things that we want to talk about are different aspects for different programs. Patrick Murphy joining us in from Jersey Shore, Paul Leonardi from New Jersey as well. We got David Petz from Johnstone, Pennsylvania. Thanks, everyone. Todd Klur over in Southern California. So let's step back and think about what a program is. Hey, absolutely. Glad that you're hopping in here with us, Patrick. So when we talk about apprenticeships, we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit here in a minute, and why we look at apprenticeship programs as so important for the industry. So let's look at ways that we can develop a program that may be looking at it from a non-traditional perspective. All right, so when we look at the transitions that are happening in our industry, Jeff, we just did, and it's been a while, it's probably been 6 or 8 months ago, we did a show talking about introducing inverters into the classroom, right? Well, what classroom is that? That's every classroom.
Yep.
Right? So when we look at education is in an explosion in our industry. You can talk to all of us, you can talk to any trainer in the industry, and they will tell you that it's an unprecedented time for education. So we have developing programs that are catering to very, very specific pieces of our industry. Yes, you may start in a vocational program where you're learning all of the fundamentals of working with equipment, but what about working on brand specific sides of the industry, right? It's really important to understand the intricacies of that equipment. Well, where are you going to learn that? Are you going to learn that at your school? Very possible. Are you going to learn that from a distributor? Well, yeah, we're actually starting to see a lot of that. Even at our contractor level, we're starting to get very serious about dedicated vocational technical programs that are specific to the equipment that's being installed. So let's look at a big balloon picture of this. Let's say that I'm a manufacturer of equipment. Let's say I'm Daikin, Jeff. And it's a good choice, isn't it? Daikin has a massive product line over many different aspects of the industry. Residential, commercial, industrial, we have air to air, air to water, we have all sorts of applications. And in a vocational program, we're going to be learning about all of these different applications, but we're going to be looking at them from a brand agnostic point. And we at some point need to start diving deeper. So if we go to a distributor, we're going to start looking at how to properly install and work with these different products. And then if we get to a contractor, now we're going to start looking at how to work with maybe even a smaller specific product line. So we're starting to work our way down to get to a point where we're very focused on the products that we're going to be working with on a daily aspect. Because if I go to a school and I learn about how to install high performance heat pumps, well, that's great. But I get out to the industry, there's a lot of different manufacturers that have them. So if I go to a distributor that's supplying that equipment, I might work with a few different high performance heat pumps. And by the time I get to a contractor, we may only sell one or two of those. We may have a specific market. So we can get very focused on the training that we're receiving. So I'd like for us to, well, we've got a little bit that we can run through in a presentation, not a ton, but I've got a few things that I want to talk about. So a lot of people ask about like accreditation and what is the programmatic accreditation that we do with schools. Well, what we're really doing with is when someone is applying for accreditation, we're looking at a program. We're looking at the capability of that program to provide an education to that consumer because our students are a consumer of our information. So let's look real quick at a few different aspects and see if they will apply to a variety of different educational programs, because you might be surprised that they will, and in different ways. And the reason I say that is because in the past, we've never really had anything other than vocational programs applying for accreditation. But in this last year, we've actually started to see distributors applying for accreditation. We've seen manufacturers applying for accreditation, and we've had contractors wondering what accreditation is about. And so here's really what it comes down to. When we're looking at a program and we're developing a program, we're going to look at 9 fundamentals. We're going to look at, does the program have a mission statement? So Jeff, from Daikin's perspective, what would be a mission statement that Daikin has for educating the industry?
In all honesty, it's about being in the forefront for me to get the name out there, because our equipment is so advanced that we can't rely on the old ways of training. So our mission statement is to try and build as much of a pipeline as we can for the contractors that need new help out there in the marketplace. So, but we owe it to ourselves and to the end users to make sure that the contractors working on their equipment have the best training possible.
Absolutely. So we move from a manufacturer perspective down to a distributor. Aaron, what would be a distributor's perspective, a mission statement for the program?
Yeah, so we follow the one of the organization, which is making the tech and the truck more efficient. And we obviously do that by providing them with the best education that can increase their quality of life, because it allows them more opportunity in their position and for the organization as a whole.
So we're getting very broad. We're going from the whole industry down into a market. And then now we get down into, Robert, what would be a mission of a program?
I'm sitting here in my very loud and crowded office, and right behind me actually is the mission of our company. And my mission is the training company needs to align with that. And so for us, we provide safety and comfort to our customers through professionally trained employees. So right there, that is in my company's mission, and my mission is to follow through with that. So, when I get to the basics of education, for me, I need to make sure that what we provide is immediate, relevant, and what they can use to get the job done as soon as they get out of here. So that's important to us.
Absolutely. Brad Tisdale is joining us. He's on mobile. I'll try to bring him in real quick and see if we can get a feed. Brad, how's it going today?
It's been a busy day. I apologize for being late. I'm on the road right now. How's it going?
That's all right. Doing well. So we're talking about missions of a program, and you represent an amazing training facility for the UA that covers residential, commercial, and industrial training programs. So from a UA apprenticeship training program, what would be a mission of a program at your level?
To provide a skilled workforce for our contractors so that when our contractors look for manpower, the apprentice, the journeyman, has the proper skill set to meet the needs of the contractor, so they can be successful and make money.
Right. Absolutely. So we're talking about 4 different training programs that all have their unique missions, but starting to see some similarities here. It's really about providing adequate training for our industry. So if we move forward a little bit and we start talking about the administrative side, typically if we're going to talk about administrative responsibilities, we're talking about making sure that a program has support for the performance of the students. We're talking about doing tests, and we're talking about doing assessments and retaining that side so that we have documentation. And that's really where HVAC excellence comes into play for a lot of schools. We handle a lot of that training and a lot of the certifications and a lot of the data side of that. But let's also look at that from different sides. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about ways Daikin works on the administrative side, especially through things
Well,
like Daikin
Daikin City houses our Daikin University, where our students, whether they be at a trade school or a contractor level, even distributor level, they have access to behind the scenes of all of our training materials. We have, web-based training. We have online on-demand courses they can take. And when we partner with a VOTech school or a college that's doing HVAC, they have access to that for all their students as well. And I'm pleased to announce that we're now branching out into high schools that are building trade schools. We just signed our first agreement this week with a high school in Texas. So they'll have access to that training too. So.
Wow. And so that was part of this conversation is if we're working on building up a program, what are the resources? What are the things that we need? And so right here, you're going to start seeing different layers, different levels of what it takes to be able to organize a program. So whether you are a vocational school and you're looking to build that program and you're needing the resources, let's just say that, Ty says, and make sure I'm on the mic. How's my audio quality coming through, guys? All right, let me double check on here. Yeah, it's coming through the Rode stereo. All right. Okay, coming through fine on the other side. Thanks, Michael. All right, so if we think about this, I'm a vocational program and I'm wanting to work with my manufacturers, and I'm wanting to work with my distributors, and I'm wanting to work with my contractors to make sure that I have a good flow. And I also want to work with my UA apprenticeship program to be able to start directing technicians into commercial industrial applications when they go forward. These are the resources that we need to discuss. So let's just say that I am building a program. Let's just assume that I'm a vocational technical school, and I'm looking to work with my local contractor. Robert, let's talk about ways that a vocational program can do an outreach with contractors to be able to supply students for a program. We always talk about the PAC meetings for a program. Then the school is really looking for communication with their local contractors. Let's talk about, are there schools in your area that reach out to have conversations about working?
For me, there are. I wish there were more. I will say that to offer that out, because that is a conversation that needs to be a little bit more and broad than it is right now. The main thing that, and this is true about any school that's trying to place people into the workforce, you need to ask me and UA and all the other people that are receiving your students what it is we actually need. So that's a needs assessment step that, it's great that you are doing all of these things. If it isn't what I need, it's not going to help me. And then the second step after that, to get to the certification is probably not the right word yet. We'll come back to that in a minute, but let's talk about tests. If you're going to tell me that somebody is ready to work, I need to be able to rely on what it is that you're using to show that they're ready to work. And so those kinds of assessments and tools not only need to be standard, but they need to be relevant to what it is that we do. And so that's an important part of the conversation.
And so we have a lot of our educators, hopefully we have some on here today, that are in that same position where they're relooking at their program, because at HVAC Excellence, we're really trying to elevate the level of consistency in our programs nationwide for what the industry is needing. So it really does start at that contractor level, understanding what is happening. So the most important thing we can do as contractors when we're developing a program is to be able to have communication with our schools and do exactly that, Robert, to be able to honestly go to the school and say, we have really had a change of our technology. We're not really doing much single stage equipment anymore, and we're focusing a lot on inverter. We had this conversation before the show that you're actually doing a lot of inverter training because it's not being supplied in the industry. So it's important that we make these relationships with our contractors to be able to see what those needs are that are out in the industry. Now, another thing that we see a lot, and we get a lot of questions from our vocational programs is, all right, so I'm really wanting to change out some of the equipment in my classrooms, and I don't know where to begin. And that's where we actually have a couple other options right here. So one very important thing to look at from any classroom is you have resources at your disposal. You actually have three right here if you start thinking out of the box a little bit. If I'm a program and I'm looking for equipment for my classroom, let's start with one here. Let's just say that I'm ready to elevate my program and I just want to get some things into the classroom. One of the things I like to do is to reach out to my local contractors for old equipment that comes in. So, I mean, Robert, let's think about how much equipment goes to the scrap from an average contractor per year. How many change outs would you say that you
Yeah, I
do
wasn't
in a
prepared for
year?
that number, but I will say out my back door. So I actually I built a training facility
Yeah.
behind one of our branches, and we have 26 branches across 3 states. So the math here, I need to math the math. But just today, our scrapper was here and picked up a container that is 40 feet long, loaded with systems. He probably pulled out systems that we had just recently pulled out from homes. I would say on the order of 35 to 40 different systems. And that was this week. So multiply that times, it's seasonal, but multiply that across the year, across 26 branches. And that number is a lot. That is a lot of equipment that we could offer up. Some of it's weird. Some of it's old. Some of it's broken on purpose. But
Yeah.
I know that's the good
Well,
stuff.
that's some of the fun stuff.
And we have a lot of that.
Absolutely. All right. So let's think about this. So that's one connection a school can make. If we start thinking about pieces of equipment that may not be 100% ready, but could be scratch and dents that are not 100% sellable, let's look at it from the distributor level, Aaron. So I know myself when I was in the distribution side that we would get periodically, we would get scratch and dent material that we would look for schools to be able to donate. And it was actually sometimes hard to find those schools. So when we start talking about making the right connections in the industry, one partnership that is very, very important to a vocational program is working with your local distributors, not just to have input for your program advisory board, but also to make those conversations for, hey, have you got any newer equipment coming to the industry that may not be in function or may not be 100%, but is going to end up going to the scrap yard if it doesn't do any good? Those are some conversations.
No, absolutely. And especially right now, we're going through the A2L transition, and we're just now starting to get those pieces of equipment in our barns. We're getting our hands on them. And, you know, you've been over to the lab the last couple of weeks. We've been in there busy with doing tests and checking out everything and just really trying to see what works and what we can put it to the task on. And so that'll be a big piece of that too. As we make those transitions and we have new equipment, then obviously the old stuff comes obsolete. And if we really want to prepare these young folks, they're going to have to be up to speed on what is in the industry currently when they go out there and hit the streets on day one.
Absolutely. And so when we start thinking about some of those classes, if I'm an educator and I'm looking to see what is coming to the industry, our local distributors are a fantastic supply of these training classes and training programs that would love to work with you to be able to make those connections. Now, Jeff, you brought up a really interesting point about working with schools on building programs from the manufacturer's level. So can you tell us a little bit about how Daikin is working to help build programs, not just in the vocational classroom, but also with distributors and contractors?
We're broadening that out a lot, Clifton, across the country, where we're working directly with trade schools and we're working with our distributors. And now some of the larger contractors like Robert, you know, are expressing interest in having their own training. And I'm glad to see that some of them are reaching out to you guys to see about getting some accreditation So that would be a huge win for them to be able to entice new employees to say, hey, we have an accredited program here that we can train you, or further your education when you come to work for us. And to me, it's all about the making sure that they've got the latest and greatest technology that's coming, but they also have to be trained on that legacy stuff too, because when they get called, if they go to work for a contractor and they're getting a service call, they have no idea what they may be walking into. I'm sure there may still be some old janitorial equipment out there somewhere that may still be working, and they don't even know what that is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Some of us that actually installed those GMP 075s and GMP 100s and set the temperature rise so the rivets didn't pop. Yeah, there's still great pieces of equipment
we're
out
not
there
using
in the
T
industry.
T87 thermostats from Honeywell anymore in the market. Now everybody wants Wi-Fi. They don't know what that mercury bulb's all about.
Exactly. And I know, Brad, when we start talking about from the UA perspective, traditionally the UA has not focused on residential equipment very much, but I've seen recently a push for the UA to even start focusing on some of the new, particularly inverter technologies that's hitting the residential sector. Can you tell us a little bit about how the UA is working with contractors to focus on new generations of equipment and refrigerants?
I get calls from contractors all the time trying to prepare their workforce for some of the new refrigerants, the R32, R454B. Matter of fact, I had a talk with one of our lead instructors today to put a program together, just for for men that are already technicians out in the field, but just to make sure they understand some of the new requirements and procedures working with the new refrigerants. So I guess the do's and the don'ts, if you will. But the UA's taken an initiative to grow service through training, and training on those new refrigerants is definitely key.
Yeah. And so with this demand for education from the contractors, we've seen partnerships develop that didn't always exist in the past. We actually have some of them right here in this circle. So typically we would look at the UA as commercial and industrial training and not necessarily on the residential side. But we have seen just in the last year or so a partnership with Johnstone, with Daikin, and the UA to help prepare residential contractors for the changes in the industry. So we get a lot of questions from people like, how do I work with different organizations? And it really comes down to, you have to get out of your comfort zone and you have to step out and ask, because the resources are here. You have an entire industry that is trying to help you develop a program. And if you don't have the resources, it's a matter of stepping out and asking.
If I could, I'm sorry, if I could, from our perspective as a contractor, I desperately would like not just college, VOTEC schools, school districts, high school programs, reach out to me. I can help you in ways that might be unexpected to you. I'm looking at questions that are going through the chat right now about not being able to get access to equipment. If you're local to me and you want to come over and play with some old stuff, I have old stuff and I'm happy to help, because that would help me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really why we wanted to do this, because we get so many different schools that are looking to expand their programs. And we'll even have educators reach out and go, okay, so we see all of this social stuff that you're throwing out there about new technologies and refrigerant transitions and technology transitions, but where do I begin? I don't have the funds to put a $20,000 system in my classroom, especially if I don't have a contractor that's actually working with me to be able to supply those students to the field. And so that's what we're here to do. So we start looking at these big connections. If I'm any kind of a program, I have to start thinking out of my traditional box, and I have to start going, okay, who in this industry is in my area that I can start having conversations with? So if we look at, let's just take some resources real quick, right? So if we look at from the manufacturer perspective, we can step into places like the National HVACR Education Conference, which will come up in March. And I think everyone here, Brad, are you going to be at the conference as well?
My whole team of instructors will be there as well. We always enjoy that.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about that. So, right, we're talking about making these connections for a program. So you have your UA team that's going to be at the conference. I know that Aaron and Robert are actually going to be presenting classes at the conference, so they're going to be there in force. And Daikin is a co-sponsor of the conference. So if you're looking for connections in the industry, whether you're a contractor looking to connect with your local distributor or your manufacturer or your UA facility to start opening up those possibilities of connections. If I'm a vocational program and I'm looking for used equipment, I'm looking for new equipment, I'm looking for scratch and dent, I'm looking to make sure that I'm preparing my students for the industry. I'm looking to help get them ready for a UA commercial and industrial role going forward. All these connections are available to you, but sometimes we don't step out of that comfort zone. You know, Howard brings this up all the time. We sometimes become this dysfunctional dating service for the industry, right? Yeah, glad you're going to be there too, Tom. Because in the past, we've not all talked extremely well together, but that is changing, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you understand that these connections are starting to open, and they're starting to be available in ways that have never been accessible before. All right, so let's move in a little bit. I want to jump back and see for some things that we want to talk about from we don't need to spend too much time on the financial side of it, but one thing I did want to talk about a little bit is program design. So as an educator, especially a vocational educator, if I know that a new technology is coming to the industry and it's a technology that I personally have not worked with in the past, I'm going to be very intimidated by that. That's just how it is. I may not feel comfortable. Eugene always says that, as an instructor, if I don't know it, I don't teach it. If I don't teach it, the students aren't going to learn. If they don't learn it, they're not going to be able to actually practice that out in the field. And so I want to make sure, here he is. I didn't know Eugene be hanging out with us, but that's exactly what we're talking about, is making sure that we are getting these connections and that we are stepping out of our own comfort zones. So if I look at this, if I look at a new technology coming to the market, and I know that inverters are a predominant product in the market, if I start having the conversations with my local contractors of what equipment is coming to the industry, Robert, let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind for a second. When you and I were talking about this conversation before, let's talk about what you have had to introduce into your programs because the industry is not prepared for them.
Well, inverters. Specific, since we brought up, hello, Daikin. Daikin Fit and Amana S, we are big players in that market, but nobody knows how to install them and nobody knows how to work on them. So we had to come up to speed very quickly on what that is. Obviously, new refrigerants are coming our way. None of the people who instruct in my training facility have touched new refrigerant yet. So making sure that our folks are prepared so we can prepare everybody else is a dance. And, it starts early with getting equipment and getting stuff that we can touch and play with and build our own expertise, which involves all of the other people here stacked on this podcast. We have to be able to figure out how to get this level up to speed before you can get the employees up to speed. But for me, so I've been teaching adults for 30 plus years and not always HVAC. I just learned how to spell HVAC a few years ago. It always comes back to making sure that the person you're trying to teach understands what's anybody. So trying to encourage my instructors to be able to do that is key to whatever the new thing is that's coming down the line.
And that's the important part. And that's the reason we want to reach out to instructors at any level. We know that these new refrigerants are new to you. We know that the new technology is new to you. And if we don't understand it, we're not going to feel comfortable introducing it. But let's look at some of the resources that you have here. You have contractors that are wanting to work with your advisory team, contractors that are teaching inverters in their own classrooms because of the importance of the technology. You have manufacturers that are bringing inverters into the classroom and doing inverter training in the classroom. So, Aaron, just for a minute, let's talk about some of the classes that you provide, and let's discuss ways that educators, whether you're a contractor educator looking to get better on this equipment, whether you're a instructional educator at a vocational program, if you're someone that's looking to get trained on some new equipment in your area, what can Johnstone as a distributor offer?
Yeah,
to
right
other
now,
educators?
the big piece is the Goodman side discharge, right? That's the latest and the greatest out of the Daikin line. And so we're really hot on that. Doing a lot of the mini split, Daikin mini split stuff with our younger apprentices that we're working with, and fit systems as well. And so on the residential side, we also have a VRV lab in both Cincinnati and Indianapolis locations. So that's been a really popular one. We actually ran a class there this week with Brian Orshell. He's one of our main instructors and a Daikin champion as well. So he gets a lot of calls from a lot of our contractors with questions on those types of things.
What if I'm an educator at a local community college? Is there the possibility of me coming to a distributor to actually do classes on new technologies and new refrigerants?
Yeah, that's something, we try and work with. Here in Indianapolis, they have what they call career centers. And so those are high schools where the kids go their junior and senior year. They go to traditional high school for the first or second half of their day, and then they'll go to a career center and they'll learn their field, which in this case would be HVAC. So we've done had an effort in the last year or so to really get around and put ourselves out there and offer those types of resources to those folks in our area.
Now, Jeff, I've been down to Waller myself and seen some of the Train the Trainer events, and a lot of people don't think about the ways that manufacturers are helping educators become more professional deliverers of content, right? You have an entire Train the Trainer program designed for instructors, whether you're an instructor at a vocational school, you're an instructor at a contractor training program, you're an instructor at a distributor, or even if you're a UA trainer and you're wanting to learn how to deliver content better. Let's talk about ways that Daikin works with trainers to become better at delivering content, but also ways that trainers can take advantage of some of the
one of
courses
the
that
things,
Daikin
Clifton,
offers.
about the trainers, we want to help them with their soft skills. The fact is, a lot of times, and not only are we behind the curve in the number of people we need in the field, we're behind in the number of trainers we need at these VOTEC and colleges and UA facilities as well. And a lot of those guys have come out of the field, so they've not had the experience of standing up in front of a class and teaching a training class. So, excuse me, that's one of the things our Train the Trainer does is with their soft skills, to help them be able to engage the audience and get the learning points across to them, not only then also the technical training too. So we try and provide both ends to be a true partner to them in the marketplace, to be able to help them out and be the best they can be when they're standing in front of their students, to make sure those students get the training that they came for. So.
Absolutely. And Brad, I've got a really good one for you. So this is something I didn't realize until I actually came to your facility, which is absolutely phenomenal. I think Howard just put a link, or someone from internal put a link out into the chat for you to get a picture so you can take a look at this facility. If I am an educator at a school, if I'm a non-union contractor and I don't have access to some of this modern technology and refrigerants, you actually have opportunities for non-union contractors to come into your union facility to learn about these new innovative technologies. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
Various partnerships, but we encourage, for the good of the industry, even though they're non-union, to come take advantage of some of the classes that are being offered, because at the end of the day, it benefits the whole industry, right? And a rising tide lifts all ships. So you have to do the right things, to support those. And you would like to think that it would bear fruit where, they would recognize that we're one of the leaders in training in the region for HVAC in our industry. And, they want to be part of it, so.
Yeah. It was a very different perspective for me. So, I grew up in a non-union environment. Most of the union work that was in my area was, commercial industrial only. They weren't in the residential and light commercial sector. And so I didn't have a partnership. I didn't know where those opportunities were. But now we're starting to see a shift. And you're right, for the good of the industry, we have seen changes happen in the industry that weren't here 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this whole conversation that we're having right now probably would not be taking place. You wouldn't have a manufacturer, a distributor, a contractor, and a UA organization all saying, hey, let's get together and let's make this industry better together. And I'll give you the resources that I have, and we'll just make this all work. And it's a wonderful place to be because of so many changes. Everyone is recognizing what's happening. Russell just brought up a great comment. We spent a lot of time internally talking about VRV, VRF, talking about the way that the industry is changing, not just in the commercial, but also in the residential sectors when we start talking about, inverter technologies. So we've had the opportunity to visit many distributors in the last few months, and we've seen manufacturers with some of the most amazing VRV and VRF training facilities. You got a phenomenal one there at the UA 449 as well. But we've also got a VRF training facility right here at my local distributor at Johnstone Supply that is open for people to come learn about the Daikin VRV, VRF equipment. So, Aaron, tell us a little bit about the different VRV programs that you have in your training facilities, not just
True.
in one. But
yeah, we have it at both the Indy West and then our Cincinnati South locations. And so we offer classes both on install and troubleshooting. We've got multiple functions in the classroom where they can go through and kind of walk through each phase, see the equipment, put hands on it. We actually just did that, like I said, this week, had a nice group in there. It's very popular. It's one of probably the most popular offerings that we have because of the inverter and everything that's come up over in the last few years, so popularity wise. So we're really excited to show it off. We're proud to have it. Like I said, we're proud to have a Daikin champion that can teach that to anyone interested.
And so when we're talking about these new VRV programs, Jeff, let's talk about some partnerships that I've seen personally with the UA just in these last few months that, like, once again, you didn't see these partnerships happening even a year ago. I mean, this really comes down to Jeff Bledsoe making these partnerships happen. We're actually seeing manufacturers working with UA facilities to get high quality VRV training labs established in the country. So let's talk about ways that Daikin in particular is working with
the fact, Clifton, that the UA gives me access to about 70,000 technicians around the country to be trained on our equipment. It's a no-brainer for me to be involved with them. When I got invited up to Brad's facility years ago, before we opened that lab, I was looking at it from the 50,000 square foot or the 50,000 foot view. Is how can I parlay this into something for the country, not just, the region up there around Pittsburgh. So I got with the higher ups at the UA, and we put together a plan where we're looking at training more and more of their trainers around the country. And they'll use Brad's facilities and the one in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for the instructors to go in and get training and be able to take it back to their locals. So then we can work directly with their locals so they don't have to do a lot of travel and stuff. But people call me, it's funny, they say, hey, I want to do something like Brad has at 449. I said, you got about 25 years? Because that's about how long it took you to put that program together. I said, you're not going to do that overnight, man. That's a stellar program. And I love that facility. If you go up there, look for my name on the wall. I signed the wall, thanks to Brad. But it amazes me the fact that people are still afraid of change. And I tell them, you need to embrace change because it's the only constant you have in your life. And this stuff is coming. The inverters are coming. People are, with the power companies being restricted on the amount of power they can put out. The inverters help take a lot of that load off the grid because, we ramp up to speed. So you might as well embrace it. But you mentioned 10 years ago, I was still teaching people how to spell VRV 10 years ago. So we've come past that point, though.
And what about with vocational programs? I know that you've also had initiatives to work with schools to develop programs at schools.
We've got one school, and I won't mention a name now because I don't want my competitors finding much out about it, but we did a beta marketing thing with them last year, and they had 2 classes, a day and an evening class, that were never full. Well, we filled them in the fall of last year, and this year, due to those marketing campaigns, they've added 3 additional classes, and they're out now full, and they're hiring new instructors. So being able to train our contractors is only part of the issue. Then we try and get to the school, so we're getting the new technicians and building that pipeline. And I just attended the American School Counselors Association in Kansas City a few weeks back to try and get the counselors, which I was very pleased to see that the high school counselors are now entertaining more about sending people to trade schools. And to Aaron's point, that the career centers and things like that, we're seeing more and more of the high schools where they'll ship the students to a trade school, and they're now getting the same amount of funding for the school if they can leave there with a certificate in something versus applying for college. Because no offense to anybody that has a college degree, some of these kids have no business going to college. Their DNA is to work with their hands, and we want to give them the opportunity and a path forward to do that. And working with partners like the UA and Johnstone and ESCO and HVAC Excellence, and even contractors like Robert, we're going to be able to do that. But I heard a lady from the UA, she looked at me a few weeks ago in Kansas City, and she said, "We let this happen." And I thought about that for a second, and she was absolutely correct. Because I knew 15 years ago that they had taken the VOTEC stuff out of my son's high school, and I didn't go down there and say anything. I did not challenge that. So she's absolutely right. As an industry, we let this happen. We did not push back on them when we saw the trades leaving the high schools. And so it's up to us now. And the partnerships and the alliances we have out there now are going to help us right that ship, because we need technicians across the country desperately.
We absolutely do. And the one misperception that we do get calls from instructors sometimes is that the industry is slowly moving towards inverters. Do we actually get educators say, "I'm not going to teach that because it's not being asked of me by my contractors yet"? So I know what your response is going to be on this one, Jeff. I'm actually going to go back to Robert just for a minute and talk about equipment in general. So if we looked at the education for an HVAC system, we could be 5-10 years ago, we could have been brand agnostic, and we could have taught the fundamentals of working on an HVAC system, and you could have been pretty successful at many pieces of equipment you're working on. That has changed very drastically. And so if we just look at an equipment lineup, tell me about what an equipment lineup would have looked like 3 or 4 years ago versus what it does now. Have you made a significant shift in inverter sales compared to
Very
in the
much
past?
so, and not even 3 or 4 years ago. Let's just bump that to like the last 2 years. Huge, right? So we had to be ready to go on that, and we weren't. So scramble,
Right.
and we figure out how to do the right thing. It would have been better for me to figure out how to do that a little bit more efficiently. But over the past, the generic basic stuff, we still need to teach too. I still need people to understand
Absolutely.
the sequence of operations for a gas furnace. That's awesome. But now we have high efficient heat pumps, right? Whoa. So that is a different thing. And the lineup from Amana Daikin is going to be different from other people who I won't mention. I won't name drop. But now that we have systems that are
Sure.
communicating systems from the inside to the outside unit, every manufacturer does that differently. And we have to pick our battles. So we pick our battles based on what we sell. But I need to make sure that our new team members who don't know nothing about nothing, including how to turn a screwdriver, can get up to speed fast on deep, dark, much more complicated equipment than what we had 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I feel like we've been kind of a bell ringer for this. And a lot of times people go, "Oh, that's coming down the years. That Cliff, he's just out there being a nutcase and talking about the future." And actually, we keep saying the future is here. For our conference this year, it's going to be very much dedicated to new technologies, new innovations, new refrigerants to help people understand, to help an industry understand that the change isn't happening. The change has already happened. And we have made a very significant shift from single stage and 2-stage into inverter technology. So you're seeing that at the contractor level. I'm going to hop over to Aaron real quick and get Aaron's input on inverter sales. Have you seen an increase in inverter sales?
Oh, absolutely.
This period
Yeah, I mean it's been huge, and like Jeff just said, everyone's looking for energy efficiency. Everyone's looking not to have that $1,000 electrical bill in January right after Christmas, and you had the lights on and all those types of things. And so, and plus we've had a really just here in the Midwest, we had a really hot summer too. And so, that's one of the things that that everyone's trying to move to is the latest and greatest. So yeah, we're seeing that quite a bit.
Brad, I wonder too, especially in these partnerships that you have with residential contractors, are you seeing the same thing, that residential contractors are coming to the UA because the UA already knows communicating equipment, it already knows variable capacity systems, it already teaches on the latest, greatest technologies for the commercial and industrial sector? Are you getting the request from residential contractors because of the changes in technology?
You're muted, Brad.
Oh, I think it muted, Brad. Not me, I promise.
Speaking of technology,
Yeah, speaking of technology. All right, we'll come
it's
back
funny
to that
though.
one here in
Let
just
me
a second.
expand on that a little bit, Clifton. In regards to embracing change, look what happened with Kodak, Nokia, Blockbuster. They didn't see the change that was coming, and they did not embrace it. And look where they're at now. And I'm telling you, I actually found out last week, I
Absolutely.
think there's 2 schools not far outside of Pittsburgh that are closing their HVAC program. The one school I was at last week, they're getting an influx of students from the other schools. So we've got to be able to, and as Daikin is a world leader in advanced technology, I think it's part of our responsibility to make sure our partners with, the UA and Johnstone and those guys we give them the tools to make them successful at what they do in the marketplace.
And that's a very, very good comment. So if we're talking about from a vocational school if we're talking about any classroom, any HVAC classroom, because I can see where a program might not be successful if they're not moving forward at the pace that the industry is moving. They're probably not going to be. I mean, we just had this amazing opportunity to visit some schools when we went out through New York, New Jersey, and we seen classrooms that were just busting at the seams. So then when you can talk about programs like this that are going to be closing, you have to go, okay, well, what is the difference? Well, the difference really comes back to, are they moving along and are they progressing with the changes and innovations in technology? So from a manufacturer, what would you want to see a school covering in its curriculum?
But definitely we start with the inverters, because those aren't going anywhere. So they need to look at that and look at where the market's going. And
Right.
I would advise them to look at the manufacturers like Daikin and the other guys out in the marketplace to see what the emerging technologies are. The fact is now we have equipment. We don't have capacitors, start capacitors and the contactors like of old. Now we're introducing equipment that comes with a Verizon. You can hook a Verizon SIM card in it and talk to it over the cloud. So those types of things, it's a different ball game now. So you've got to stay with those emerging technologies. And inverters is just a part, that's just the heart behind the equipment. All the Internet of Things and stuff that we're trying to embed in our equipment is some things that they've got to start looking at. And no offense to some of the instructors, they're going to have to up their game too. They're going to have to learn on this equipment so they can teach it.
Absolutely. I don't know, Brad, did your audio come back through for us? Nope, still not coming through. I don't know where we messed up there. The audio, I don't know if it connected to the vehicle and disconnected but so I do want to bring up another thing here. So if we talk about, as a contractor, if I'm an educator and I'm trying to prepare my students for a career in the HVAC industry, and I'm trying to prepare them for my local contractors, if I'm not preparing them for these changes in technologies, I'm really doing a disservice to the industry by not staying up to date. When Jeff was talking about, companies like Kodak and companies that did not change with the changes in technology, they fell to the wayside. Do you see, Robert, contractors that are not staying up to pace and are only working with older technologies starting to fall to the wayside because they're not keeping up with innovations?
They are, although it is, a little bit bifurcated. I'm going to use that fancy word. We will have contractors, because they can work on old equipment, and there's lots of old equipment out there. We'll continue to try to keep that old equipment going. And there's a reason why we're going towards inverters and other pieces of new technology, because it's just better for everything. New refrigerant is better for the environment. So when we have these folks that are trying to continue to whack it with a stick, we're not necessarily doing the right thing with that. So we do have contractors that do try to stay with that and I'm going to support my own brand and say we will eat those contractors' lunch. If you want to be successful going forward, you have to be able to do this. Just to jump on a little bit about what Jeff said, expectations for schools. I need schools not only to teach these new technologies, including the communications aspect. And when I say communicating systems, I am also talking about the Internet of Things and the different ways we access these devices. But I need to take a meta level at that. So if we want people to learn how to embrace change, we have to teach people how to embrace change. And nobody wants to. We're all just kind of DNA wired so that change is hard. But that's got to be a thing, because it's going to continue doing that for the rest of our careers and our children's careers and onward and onward.
Yeah, I hope we get audio from Brad, because I got a feeling he'll actually have insight on that.
Yes.
Now you're back with us. Because I have a feeling that residential contractors are reaching out to the UA for this education, because the UA already teaches all of these things. They teach inverters, they teach new refrigerants, they teach communicating systems, they teach building management systems, or things are interconnected. Do you feel that the residential contractors are coming to UA because they are realizing if they don't get ahead of the curve, they're going to be left behind?
I think, in all honesty, I think they're a little fearful of us. So I think they're a little intimidated. Our policy is to have an open door where we would welcome them in, but a lot of them, I think, are just holding on to the old contactor and the old start capacitor, as Jeff mentioned, and struggling to advance themselves. But they're gonna have to jump in the water pretty soon here, because those days are gone.
Yeah. If we look at an equipment perspective, Jeff, if we talk about transitions in equipment, if we look at, say I'm an educator and I'm not aware of the percentage of inverter equipment being manufactured today versus what it was 5 years ago, are those any kind of numbers? I know this is asking a lot. Can you give a general comparison of a shift from traditional systems to inverters that have happened in the last 5 years?
I do not know those numbers. I can tell you that when I started with Daikin in 2006, we were only selling inverters. That's all we brought here in the States was inverters. And but some of our commercial equipment did have a standard compressor in it, but the inverter would always start first, so it wasn't a load on the grid. And then when it reached its capacity, it would hand it off to the standard converter, and then our standard compressor, and it would run on from there. But I know we are making changes even in the manufacturing that we bought with Goodman and Amana, putting inverter technology in their equipment. So there's a lot of inverters being built in Houston, Texas, that are being out in the marketplace. And I know it's shifting, because the homeowners are now wanting the quietness of the inverters. They don't want that big, loud, wanking noise outside their house. But back to Robert's point, I had a conversation with a instructor the other day. He drove by a neighborhood. They're building multi-million-dollar homes, and he looked, and they put two, pretty much sure they were 5-ton standard, like 14 SEER units on a multi-million-dollar house. And I'm like, those are the guys that are still price driven. They're not following the market. And people like Robert, like you said, they're going to eat their lunch eventually. They're not adding value. They're not adding value. There's no way I would put a $1 million house in and put a 14 SEER system in it. It's just not going to happen.
I talked to one equipment manufacturer, and they had stated that 5 years ago they had a 20% line card of their total sales was inverter. So they were 80% single stage, two stage, and 20% inverter. And as of this last year, they had completely flipped, and they were an 80% inverter delivery and 20% single stage, which was on the way out. A lot of people don't realize there's actually legislation looking at single stage equipment that could eliminate a single stage equipment in a very short period of time. So we
the
really
Pacific
have to
Northwest, they're already doing a lot of that stuff, and so is California and even New York about the advanced heat pumps and the electrification that they're putting in. They want these advanced heat pumps, because I remember when I started in HVAC sales 36 years ago, and heat pumps first hit the market, they weren't that efficient below 36 degrees, but we are so much better than we used to be.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. I mean, I had a few slides, but I really, we didn't even stay on topic on the slides because I think we got down into the nitty gritty, the important stuff, people understanding that it is an inverter evolution. Our industry is changing. And as instructors, we have the responsibility of preparing our students for a changing world. You've heard from a manufacturer, a distributor, a contractor, and a UA organization all saying the same thing. Our industry's changing, and it's changing so fast, sometimes it catches us off guard. But what we have to do is we have to surround ourselves with the resources to be able to be prepared for that. So we are encouraging you to reach out to your manufacturers, to reach out to your distributors, to reach out to your local contractors, bring them in, invite them into your advisory board meetings and say, what do you actually need and what are you actually seeing out in the industry? Because we hear buzz that things are changing, and this is the proof that it's changing across an entire
It's a great time
industry.
to be a young man or woman and get in this industry.
I love it. I mean, if you think about this, like we could probably have an entire conversation on the value of a highly skilled, highly
Great
trained
time.
and certified
And they
technician.
got the world in their hands.
That's why I use that tagline, and Brad put it on his wall up there. It said, "Welcome to your future," because that's exactly
right.
what it is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, it is. Well, even from the distributor perspective, Aaron, if we look at a distributor that's looking at new contractors and you've got a product line coming out, say that S series Amana horizontal discharge inverter communicating system, what kind of contractor are you going to be looking for to sell those products to? You're going to be looking for contractors that are staying ahead of the stage, that are staying prepared with training, and are educating their technicians. So ideally, we're wanting to understand that it's everyone that is looking for these highly skilled technicians.
No, absolutely. And, you know, we talked a lot about kind of people holding on to the past, but we can't forget, too, that we've got a whole generation coming in. And so, you know, one of the things that we work through on our apprenticeship program is getting these young folks to come in and teaching them, because, see, they're born with the skills of technology. I can remember my youngest daughter picking up my wife's iPhone at like 2 or 3 years old and already knowing how to get to her favorite show.
Yeah.
So that is the generation that we're dealing with now. They already have an upper hand on that. And so they really embrace it when they come in. It's something they really get excited about. So I think, you know, I'm really optimistic that even though we do still have some folks that maybe holding on to the past, we've got a couple generations of folks right now that are really interested in embracing this. And we'll probably dial down on it and be the subject matter experts we're going to need as things change.
No, Patrick Adler just brought up a great point that I think we ought to finish this program on. And as you mentioned about finding a good apprenticeship program. So even if I come out of a vocational school and I've got all my fundamentals and I've got the basics of inverter technology and how things operate, it's a fantastic opportunity to start looking at apprenticeship programs to take that to the next level. So I'd like for each of you to tell us a little bit about the apprenticeship style programs.
Sure. Yeah. So we have what we call the essentials. And we did the research for quite a while. We found out that contractors, when they send someone to training, they get hit 3 ways. They're paying the person to be there, they're paying us to train them, and then they're paying a person to be there and they're not bringing in revenue. So what we've done is we went out and we've hired young men and women to come in and work part-time for us 3 days a week in our warehouses. And then they attend the classes on their own time 2 days a week. And so we have a 24-week program that they go through. 14-week program, 28 days that they go through. We put them through all of the install classes. Many of the schools, they focus on theory and service. So we're trying to help fill that gap in the install, give them multiple installs in not only furnaces, but air handlers and mini splits, get them their EPA. We're doing a little bit of troubleshooting service side. And then we also work with them. We talked about soft skills earlier, communication, mitigating conflict, problem solving. So that was kind of my background in leadership development. So I've taken that and made that work and now into the field and try to help them, because many young folks don't have those skills quite yet. We have an 18-year-old that just came out of high school. He graduated on a Thursday, started our program on a Monday. He'd never interviewed before. So this week we had 3 of them that we're putting out and trying to get them placed. We sat down and we did some interview prep and some live reps on mock interviews with them. So just some things like that is what we're focused on right now.
Fantastic. So a distributor working to grab those students and start helping prepare them for an industry. Robert, tell us a little bit about your program.
As a contractor, to me, I am industry. So we will bring, and it doesn't have to be kids. Sometimes I refer to them that way. We will bring in people that do not understand HVAC, and we will spend 11 weeks with them. We split it up. So we're seasonal. I'm not going to teach somebody how a furnace works in May. So I will teach what you need to know at the time. And we will spend that, do the basics, get them their EPA, teach them how electricity operates so they don't hurt themselves, safety. Then we get into systems, and we will go one of 2 ways. So we have a program that will teach somebody how to run what we call maintenance, which is the basic tune-up level stuff, and that will help graduate them towards service. Or depending on their proclivity, we might go the install path. And so we have a different program that will help teach them install. And, after this, what I would like to do is talk to Johnstone and see, where the commonalities are there. But the way I approach it is, if I'm not able to get the people that I need, I'm going to make the people I need. So we can approach it that way from scratch. What he just said, we will pay you while you're here doing this. We will spend the time to help you do it right, while you are also doing ride-alongs with seasoned professionals so that you can see how it works out in the field. And once you get out in your own van and you're doing your thing, you know what you're doing. So we're not going to just leave you to the wolves, which I think is super important. Last thing I'll say, because I know we're running low on time, the soft skills, the communications training, that is vital. And everything I'm saying we provide from a contractor standpoint, if I could get this type person, and sometimes we do, from a VOTEC program or from somewhere else, I'll take that person too. I am agnostic. That is fine. But what we suffer from the most is actually the soft skills. So I need to be able to make sure that people can present themselves, conduct themselves effectively in a home as a professional, and do all of those things that he mentioned right before me. So we do that as well.
So for those out there in the audience, if you don't realize, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to have us a virtual program advisory committee here so that we can understand as we start building our students with these fundamentals. It's absolutely crucial that we're helping with those soft skills. We're helping with the inverter technologies. And then we connect with other industry partners to be able to set them up for a successful career where they can continue their education. Brad, do you mind telling us a little bit about the apprenticeship program through
Sure.
the UA?
So we actually just conducted interviews today. This year we'll actually have more opportunities for service technicians than in our construction. So the service industry continues to grow. We offer a 5-year program, and the beauty of apprenticeship is that the training takes place and there's no cost to the student, and then also they're employed while they're going through their training program. So we start off with high school students that perhaps may have been in the VOTEC, attended our classes at night. We offer free training at night for high school students that are trying to get in the industry, with the intention that we'll get them out to work as a helper for the contractor. And then if they're successful on their application applying for the apprenticeship, they start with a 10-week program. So in that 10 weeks, it's a 400-hour program, but we call it a boot camp, if you will. And it's really learning all the fundamentals. It's the multimeter, it's refrigeration gauges, it's understanding thermodynamics and the basics, the math, the science. We pack in a lot in those 10 weeks. With the soft skills, we actually spend an entire week, 40 hours, just devoted to customer service. So we actually bring in a customer service trainer. They spend 40 hours with the students, and then we bring in actors. and we do role playing so that the students can actually work through different situations that you might find in a home or in an office building, dealing with the customer. So there's a lot there, but we welcome any young man, young person, man or woman, that wants to come in and they're interested in the service industry. Please stop and see us. We're looking for good people.
Absolutely. And HVAC Excellence has an articulation agreement with the UA. So for all of our HVAC Excellence accredited programs, I highly encourage you to reach out to your local UA to establish those extended educational opportunities, bringing that student right out of the classroom and into a continuing education program. So definitely make sure to reach out to your local UA and help build that partnership in our industry. And Jeff, could you tell us, as we wrap things up, a little bit about Daikin's educational outreaches, especially through Daikin City and all the courses that are available to educators?
The educators have free access to our Daikin University. So all they got to do is contact me and I can get them in touch with that so they can go in there and see what we've got. We've got schools now that are assigning their students to take the online on-demand classes sort of as homework, which helps their education. And so, because we know they're limited to a number of hours in there. And I need to make sure that we've got some stuff after the conversation here, that we've got more things that are available to them on the soft skills. Because like Aaron mentioned, the fact that his child knows how to use this to get to their thing, but they lose dealing with these and texting and emailing and things like that. They lose that personal communication. So that's something we haven't been teaching this younger generation, is how to communicate. And sometimes, I mean, trust me, in Florida, and it's 95 degrees outside and they've been in without air for 3 days, they're not in a very good mood when you show up. So, and you've got to be able to deal with that conflict and be able to resolve that. And that's just an added portion of it, because you certainly don't want to burn that bridge. Because with contractors, and Robert can attest to this, it's that longevity of the customer relationship. So they're telling you more and spreading it by word of mouth advertising. That's the biggest thing the contractors have to deal with. The same with manufacturers and distributors. That word of mouth, we've got to make sure we treat the customers right, or they're going to tell some people and it's going to snowball from there. So we don't need that in the marketplace. But I'm glad to be partnered with the guys that are on this call here. It's from Daikin's perspective, we're very honored and blessed to have the relationships we have in the marketplace.
Yeah, it is a growing marketplace. As you can see, these partnerships and these friendships and relationships continue to develop, which will make our community, make our industry stronger as we go along. We had a couple comments that came in looking for additional resources. Froggy Beluga and Patrick Adler. So Howard put a link into the messages. You can also go to escogroup.org. You can go to the accredited programs, and it'll show you HVAC Excellence accredited programs across the United States. And in this follow-up video, when we're done, I'll put all of the links to make contacts with Johnstone, to make contacts with Summers, to make contacts with UA. And you can continue these conversations as you go along. So we're grateful everyone joined us. This is a fantastic conversation. I'm blessed to be able to have done our 100th episode of Did You Know? Yay! It just shows that the industry is growing. This community is growing significantly, and I am very, very honored to be here. So I think we'll wrap it up for the day. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And we'll see you again next week on Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show.
Thank you for joining Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show, brought to you by the ESCO Institute and HVAC Excellence. Our mission is to bring the top educators of the industry here for you in a live, unique experience so that you can join us from multiple social platforms, all with the opportunity to ask questions, to be involved, and to learn about the things that are changing in our industry as they are changing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notifications when we go live every week. Are you an educator looking for resources to be the best that you can be? Man, you're in the right place. And we invite you to come join us at the National HVACR Education Conference, where we bring all of these guests and many more, along with manufacturers and different organizations of the trade, so that we can all be in one place at one time and gather this information to make us better together. How do you learn more? Go to escogroup.org, select HVAC Excellence, and then the conference. I look forward to seeing you again next week on Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show.